let me just start by, first of all, these comments are fantastic, but let me start by just recognizing again Governors Cox and Moore. You know, people say there's no political leadership in this country, and where are the leaders, and why don't we have anybody? And they're all missing in action. They're all a bunch of dogs. I think we saw it tonight that we have leaders in this country, and we have leaders in both parties, and they're ready to assume leadership positions and already doing so. So I want to thank you. I live in Maryland, so I'm a constituent of Governor Moore's, but I really spend most of my time working in Utah, so I feel like I work for Governor Cox as well, and what an honor tonight. And I thought it was so interesting that both of you grew up in families that had no politics. Not me. I mean, I had political buttons that held my clothes together. You know, I was asked what I should do, what I would do if I were president of the United States when I was 4 years old, and expected to answer with a coherent idea for what I could do to solve the Cuban Missile Crisis or something like that. So I grew up in a very political context. It wouldn't ever occur to me not to know the political party of other people. I mean, you two may not know, but I know. And I think to know and not to assume and not to judge and not to pigeonhole and not to demonize is another thing. I grew up in a political culture and climate that this culture is completely foreign to me. Doesn't look like the country I grew up in. But all three of my uncles who served in the United States Senate and one in the White House, it was almost intuitive, normal, natural that they would talk to their Republican colleagues, that they would dine and eat with their Republican colleagues, that they would have the kinds of experiences Donna just described with their Republican colleagues. We had Republicans in our house. Lowell Weicker was in our house. Mark Hatfield was in our house, great Republicans over the many years that my dad visited to get the Office of Economic Opportunity legislation passed. Every single Republican congressperson on the Hill, every one of them, bar none, to try to get their votes. So it was intuitive to try to get legislation passed and try to get things done that you would try to build bipartisan. So the idea that we are hopeless in this moment, that this is an inevitable, incorrigible, unmanageable problem, it's a new and recent phenomenon. It is not inevitable. We have lived in many times when there have been great divisions in the country. We know that. But we have not necessarily lived in a time that had such great paralysis. So I just want to say that, you know, I learned many lessons as a kid. My dad was involved in starting the Peace Corps, which was a bridge-building initiative between the United States, young people in the United States, and of course many other legislative things that came through other members of my family. But the single most powerful influence on me was the influence my mother had in launching the Special Olympics movement. And even as a child at 3 and 4 years old, as I watched her in our backyard teaching children with intellectual disabilities who came from institutions, who were locked up, you know, who came with restraints, who came with aids, who came only with permission from governors sometimes to be allowed out, I realized very early on that there was a central issue in life, and that was that to treat people with contempt and fear was a problem. These people were all locked up for life because people were afraid of them, afraid of what they didn't understand and what they didn't know. And at a very early age, it struck me that that was an issue unto itself, the fear and the contempt that divides people from meeting, from understanding, from connecting, from playing as children, from learning as older children, and from living and working together as adults. That fear and contempt are an issue unto themselves. What I think we saw tonight with Governor Cox and Governor Moore was the emergence of a new issue on the political landscape. It's not just a means to an end any longer. It's not just a background noise question. It's not just, as Donna has just articulated in the context of the storms, it's not just a relationship issue. It's a new issue that is blocking the actual fabric of the country, stopping us from solving problems, dividing our families. You'll see data, Governor Cox, in a few days. Over 30% of Americans have ended a relationship in their own family as a function of political contempt and demonization. It's not that they disagree. It's that they demonize the person they disagree with. So, you know, our small team, our Utah-based small team, following in your footsteps, Governor, has been working to look at what would it take to take the people who are doing the demonizing. Guess who they are? I'm sorry to say, a lot of them are in the media and in politics and the algorithm. Those are the three primary force fields that children will say, yeah. We asked children, you know, I did a focus group with children not too long ago talking about bullying. You know, everybody wants to stop bullying in kids. And kids kept saying to me, well, no, we don't have bullies in this school. And I said, well, what about the name calling? And well, it's not so bad in our school. And I pushed and I said, you keep asking us about bullying. The seventh grader said to me, the adults are the bullies. It's not us. So we ask about children. Children are actually turned off by this for most of their childhood, and when they get to college, they start to think, well, maybe I have to do this to get along, because they see the adults getting famous, getting tweets, what do you call it, Kathleen, likes, clicks. You get famous, you get powerful, and you get rich with contempt. That's what they think. And where did they learn that? They did not learn it from fourth grade, 4-year-olds and 6-year-olds. They learned it from us. So our challenge was to say, well, what would it take to actually invite political figures to change? And we talked to a bunch of folks, including learning from you, Governor, and we developed this idea that we should score politicians based on how they perform on a scale of hatred in the characterization of their opponent up to dignity. It's a 1 to 8 scale, which we piloted in the state of Utah, and we taught students how to use it. And they started to look at this and, okay, well, if I'm better than you, maybe that scores about a 4 or a 3. But if you're evil, that scores about a 2. And then if I say you're evil and you deserve to be destroyed, that's a 1. That's war language. That's the language of violence. Now, if you think about how you characterize the other party, we know which one that is for Spencer. We don't know the rest of these people. But most Americans today think that they have to score the other party as evil. That's the way we think about it. That's a hair's breadth above violence. So don't be surprised when you talk about the other people being evil. Don't be surprised that some people hear that as a call to violence, because it is. So we've got this situation where, I just go back very briefly to this index, the dignity index. What we found is, we said, well, now you can score Governor Cox, you can score Senator Lee, or the candidate McMullen, you can score the congressional. And the kids said to us, you know, we want to use this for ourselves. We actually want to change the way we characterize other people. I had a student say in a classroom, when I was a college student, I was showing them the index, and a student raised her hand. She said, you know, yesterday I posted that this person I'm no longer talking to is a swear word. I'm not going to say that in here. A blank, a lot of letters, word. And she said, I'm going to take it down when class is over. I don't want to be at that level. I don't want to use contempt. So our view here is that we have to get really practical here and not just wax eloquent about what it will take to have us think and feel and even pray differently, God willing, and remind us of our own scriptures and all of our traditions that tell us that hatred is not where we want to land. Let's put it broad. But invite us to be very practical in learning how to incentivize the people in political life, like Cox, like Moore, and reward them. And if I dare say, remind those who are not scoring well in the dignity index or in other measures of speech, remind them that we will not reward them with our votes and our clicks and our money. Until we create a counter incentive, and the simple premise, I'll just bring it back to the Special Olympics experience because it's so powerful for me. The simple premise of the Special Olympics movement is that you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, right? You get to that starting line and you run your race with every ounce of energy God gave you, and you deserve the dignity that you were born with, right? You didn't earn it by coming here. You didn't earn it because I hugged you or gave you a medal. You were born with that dignity. And when Americans start to remind themselves that that is a fundamental American value, maybe de Tocqueville taught it, but we haven't got there yet. And we didn't have it in 1830, and we didn't have it in 1860, and we didn't have it in 1960, and we don't have it now. But we could get there. And we could create a movement that incentivizes people to want to go there, not because they're going to get punished, but because they actually prefer to live in relationships where no matter how difficult the tension and the issues is, they can look the other person in the eye and know that that person is a child of God and treat them that way too.
Amen. Thank you.